Today in the bunker, we're going to build a convenience store for the zone. So I had a general concept of what I wanted to do. Went ahead and did some preliminary sketches and some measurement tests and figured out how I wanted the signage to be and all that good stuff. So I took that and then laid it out and knocked a bunch of stuff over. Laid that out on my foam core. So we'll get that all cut out and we'll do some test fitting and be right back. Alright, so there's all of our parts cut out and I was sure to label them. These are offcuts we'll be using at some point. Our sidewall, this will have an entrance on the side and an entrance on the rear. And it'll be kind of a small store. I don't have really good photographs of the actual one in Emerald Summer Camp, so I'm going to take quite a bit of artistic license with this. Hopefully that's okay. So let me fire up old GUI and we'll start gluing this together. One thing I should note is the doorways. I'm going to go ahead and put the framing in before I glue this on, and I'm just using our old friend the coffee stirrers. Be sure when you do it though, since we're going to put some siding on this, to have this protrude just enough so that it's not sunk in when you put the siding on. So you want it to stick out about 1 millimeter or so. Alright, so we've got that rear wall piece ready to go, and our glue gun has heated up. So we'll put a little glue and maybe get it in the shot so you can see it. Alright, and we will put that on there like that. We're going to wipe off our excess. And because this isn't super high temp, you can do that and not burn yourself. Alright, and let's get our square in here to try to square it up a little bit. Here we go. Alright, so we'll do the same thing with our other walls, and we'll be right back. Alright, so there's our basic carcass put together, and you can see where I got off on my measurements a little bit, but we'll fix that. It's not a problem. One of the nice things about doing A, buildings with siding, and B, ruined buildings with siding, or abandoned, is that you can do it a little bit sloppy and it still works. Not intentionally sloppy, but I'm not the greatest craftsman that ever lived. In any case, our windows, we're going to fabricate from hardware cloth. This is like the stuff we used for the little bunkhouses, it's just larger. So these are 1/4 inch, this is 1/2 inch. So we're gonna, and I'm gonna use some of the offcuts to fill in this gap, because we'll have the sign up there, and then probably a little strip on each side, maybe not. I may just use some balsa, who knows. Anyway, we're gonna cut that to fit and we'll be back. Okay, so we've cut a piece to fit. I left the prongs coming off on the bottom like that piece is and pushed that down into the foam core and did the same on the top. So that way you can kind of adjust it height wise and get that right where you want it. Also, we're going to use some of this balsa on these side pieces and fill that gap in. So that'll look pretty good once we do that. So let me get this glued together and we will continue. Okay, so just our balsa wood or basswood fillers we're going to put in there. We just kind of measure and then just take a hobby saw or a hacksaw and cut that as neat as you can. And I find that it helps to go around each face of that, and that gives you a bit neater cut. You can just kind of squeeze that in there. So I'm going to PVA those in place, and that's a little off just ever so slightly, but it'll be covered up by the siding, so it's not a big deal. Alright, so let me get those in place and we'll be back. Alright, so while those set up, they're in there pretty snug. I cut them just slightly oversized so they kind of squeeze in there. And that PVA will hold it nicely once it sets up. Alright, so I guess our next step is to put some siding on this. We're going to do it the way we did our bunkhouses. We're just going to lay some strips on there. I'm not going to put the bottom or the top strip on. I'm just going to lay the siding on, and then we'll put these on as applique on top. It makes it a lot quicker to add the pieces much faster. We may do one across the middle just as kind of a decorative thing. The actual building, I can't tell from the pictures if it was actually made from metal or if it's plywood or what. It's not actually sided that way, but again, artistic license. I don't have some super fantastic photos of it, so I'm just going to do the best I can, and hopefully that's good enough. So we'll be right back. Okay, I just wanted to show you what I did there. I just, because the way that was stuck out, I just sort of spliced it into the siding. And once it's painted, I don't think you're really going to notice. That other side will get covered up completely, so... but, you know, even if you're off a little bit, you can make it work. Another helpful note is these coffee stirrers are approximately 5 millimeters apart, or 5 millimeters wide, rather. So I try to do everything in increments of 5s where I can. It makes it a lot easier trying to fit those on, and it's a bit more forgiving than if you just, you know, oh, this is 17.5. Well, if it needs to be, that's fine. You can easily fit these around it, but anytime you can save yourself some headache by using that, whatever the measurement of your sticks are, using that as a base, and it's all about that base, I would, you know, try to use that. Okay, so there's one face of it done. One of the things I do, if you have the sticks that are bent a little bit, I'll try to make them, I'll put them up generally at the top so it looks like they're kind of peeling out. It just gives it more of an abandoned look, and I want to put some trim on the bottom so that won't be in the way of that. But if you're careful with your spacing, and like I said, if you measure everything based on the size of your sticks, usually you can get by without having to trim any and fit them in there. So we're going to cover the rest of this and be back. One other detail I did want to mention, I put this door jamb on using that same balsa or basswood. I had to notch it out a little bit to fit that door, but then I just PVA glued that on there and sat it down on the table so that it got nice and level. Not that you could see me set it on the table there, but anyway, so that's how I did that. I didn't want you to be too confused, and I try not to skip steps. Alright, so one of the reasons I did the trim on the outside also was so that I could glue the siding on like that, and then once that glue has set up a bit, you can just take your shears or whatever cutting instrument you've got that will easily cut those, and just do that and cut them to length. Alright, so I'm going to finish that and we'll be back. Okay, so we've got all of the siding on. We've got our bottom trim. We've got all of our door frames in. I did the same thing to the back door that I did to this entrance. I put kind of a sill there. And then also around the window, I put some pieces to help define that it's a window. I'm going to prime this, the metal, with, get out of here, open the door and flies come in, what the heck, with some Mod Podge, and put the good coat on there so when I prime this, then it'll stick really well. Also, I made a ceiling or roof part. I just measured in so that that'll sit in there and not slide around, and I'm going to paint both sides of that, and I'm also going to prime some of this corrugated paper, so we'll cut that and make our roof covering once that's all dry. So we'll get to it. Something else I should mention, this is going to have some signage on it because I didn't really feel like trying to hand paint it. So I found some over on, I think it was Thingiverse, found some Russian letters that I shrank down and printed out, and I did a couple of sets. This one I dry brushed with white so you could see. It doesn't show up on camera that great. But we're going to glue those on there and make ourselves a really cool sign for the front of this. So we'll get ready to prime this and be right back. Right, so that's everything primed. While I was doing that, I remembered I hadn't made the doors yet. So I'm going to do what I usually do and make a backing piece that'll glue in there, and then make a door that will kind of applique onto there. This one's a double door, so I'm going to use a little tiny piece of the styrene rod. If you don't have any of that, that's fine. Just cut yourself even a piece of the stirring stick cut very narrow, just to help define the fact that there's two doors. And then we're going to make doorknobs out of some paperboard and this 1/16 hole punch. We'll just glue one of those punched holes as a doorknob. Works really well, so we'll be back. Alright, so there's everything primed, put together. We've got our doors in and assembled. And what we're going to do next is take some of these Russian letters and we're going to put our signage up here. So let me get those letters ready and we'll get started. Alright, so I've marked off where these are going to go. And I've got my letters set out, and there are 7 of them. So we're going to set the first one, and then we'll start setting the rest of them at an even thing, and that way it'll keep them nice and even and centered. So I'm going to put them on there with some super glue and try to get them straight. Okay, after much wailing and gnashing of teeth, I held the letters with these tweezers, put the super glue on the back, and tried to carefully place them. And as you can see, they're a bit crooked, but they're on there. So we're going to call it good, because when I work with super glue, the number one thing I glue is the piece to my fingers. So I managed to only do that a couple of times. That's fairly straight, should look good when it's painted, so let's keep going. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is take some thinned out black paint, and like there was a large kind of white streak here. We'll just sort of paint over that and try to get down anywhere that we may have missed a little bit priming. And I should have painted this foam core black before we started using it, but you know, I get in a hurry and that's what happens. Alright, so we'll just cover up the most egregious of the white spots. And we'll get ready to put the black wash on. Alright, we're just going to lay that black wash on there and really bring out that wood grain. And it goes on super dark because we've mixed it fairly rich. And this is just my usual half water, half future floor polish with some black paint added. And you can mix that up as lean or as rich as you like. And it lightens up considerably as it dries. This is already turning into kind of a barn gray, and it was pretty black when I stuck it on. So we'll do that all the way around. I'd also point out I took some black paint, mixed it with PVA, and kind of painted around the letters to try and give them a little extra strength around the edges, so hopefully they won't just pop off of there. The super glue probably hold them forever, but I'm super paranoid about it. It looks a little messy, but we'll clean it up. Okay, and while we let that dry, we're going to put some black wash on the roof part, so we'll let that dry too. Alright, so I let that dry fairly well, and I went back with some gray and kind of tried to neaten up around where those letters are. Didn't do a fantastic job, but we'll make that work anyway. So let's get ready to do some dry brushing and age this wood